Building a Tenor Guitar, Part 5 at randallprice.com. Next I'll build spreader clamps for the guitar mold. The way spreader clamps work are by having two wooden heads, and then they have a threaded section between the two heads that when they're unscrewed they put pressure on the two heads to hold the sides of the guitar in the mold. So for the threaded portion of the spreader clamps, I'm going to use these two turnbuckles, and when they are unscrewed they lengthen out. That'll put pressure on the two heads in the mold. I took one of these cutouts from the center of the mold and I marked where I thought I would like the center of my spreader clamps to be. I thought I should have one right in the deepest part of each curve. So this is a center line for one, this is a center line for another, and I may want one on this waist area too. From there I just measured out equal distances on each side of my center line, from there to there, and then I just took these over to the table saw and cut along those lines. Then I laid my turnbuckles out and I opened them up a little bit and then marked where the thread started on the turnbuckle. I made another cut there on each one of these, so ended up with these two shapes for these heads. So that's what I'm going to use as my patterns. This one looks good. This one, just eyeballing it, looks like it may be a little too wide, so I may end up narrowing it down some, but I do that after I get all three of the pieces glued together. So the next thing to do is get the other pieces cut out to the same dimensions, and then I'll take them over to the router table and route out the profiles a little bit so they conform really good with the center of the guitar. And after I get all of them cut out, I'll take the center of the three pieces, cut out the half circle with my hole saw and the drill press, and then glue them up. I'll do the same thing with the two large heads for the other end. One thing that I still need to do is to drill the holes to bolt the two sides of my guitar mold together. So in order to do that, I've taken one side of the mold over to the drill press and I drilled a hole in each end. I have it centered side to side, end to end on these tabs, and I drilled that on the drill press, so I got a good perpendicular hole in the first half, and then I'll just use this first half as a guide to drill through the second half. I'll put a bolt in here, and then I'll do the same on the other end. use carriage bolts on this. Some things that I have gotten done, I went ahead and got these spreader clamps profiled and put in place, so both of these clamps are done. I have decided to go ahead and make one more spreader clamp for the waist of the guitar, and I have those glued up right now, waiting for those to dry, and I'll profile those and put that in place. One thing I can make right now is the kerfed lining, which is used to join the back and the top to the sides of the guitar. I'll make the kerfed lining out of mahogany. This is the mahogany that I have. This is the profile of kerfed linings, and there's at least a couple different types. The traditional type is triangular shaped, and the kerfs that are cut into that face the inside of the guitar, so the kerfs are not glued to the sides. The other type, the reverse kerfed lining, you can see the profile is sort of rectangular with one edge rounded over, and then the kerfed edge is actually glued to the sides of the guitar. And I'm going to make the reversed kerfed lining, and you can see the dimensions of that kerfed lining. That's pretty standard sizes. So I'll start by cutting that mahogany down to 5/8 inch wide on the table saw. Before I cut this mahogany, I wanted to point out one thing. I think you can see this. This piece of mahogany that I have is slab cut, so the grain runs this way, and I want vertical grain mahogany to use for the kerfed lining. So what I'll do is rip it so my final piece of wood is in this orientation, so my grain is vertical. And as I said, I'll do that on the table saw next. I ran these both through the table saw, and now I've turned them on edge, and as you can see there, now I have vertical grained mahogany. I'll take these over to the thickness sander just to sand these two edges to get them smooth, and then I'll rip these down to the width they need to be. The first kerfed lining has a round over on one edge of it, and the wood I'm going to use is 5/8 of an inch thick. So here's the wood, and I want to round over this edge prior to ripping this down. It's slightly less than 1/4 of an inch wide, and it would be kind of a dangerous operation to cut that to 1/4 of an inch wide first and then try to round it over. So I'll round it over while I still have the stock intact, and then once it's rounded over, I'll rip the edge off. Okay, I actually rounded over two edges, so I'll be able to cut. I'll be able to rip a piece off of here and a piece off of here and get two pieces of kerfed lining from this one piece of wood. So I'll take this over to the bandsaw. I've set the bandsaw up to cut slightly over 1/4 of an inch. My kerfed lining needs to be slightly in 1/4 of an inch. So I'll rip that to size here on the bandsaw, and then I'll bring it down to the final thickness over on the thickness sander. Seven 32nds of an inch thick and 5/8 of an inch wide with the 1/4 inch profile on that. I'll probably just sand that profile a little bit to smooth it out a little bit. Next I have to cut the kerfing in these. I'll do that over on the bandsaw. Okay, it took me a little bit to get my kerfing operation figured out, but I got it set up so it'll work. I have a piece of plywood here clamped to my bandsaw, and I have the blade exposed just the depth that I want to cut into my lining. It's the blade is exposed at the depth of the kerf that I want. Back here I have a piece of wood actually taped to my plywood, and that's to hold the piece of wood that I'm kerfing out away from the blade, so I can push the piece into the blade and then it springs back. I tried it without this on here and I was having to pull it back and my wood would fall over, and it was just really cumbersome. So by putting this piece of wood in here, it greatly helped the operation. I'll get a piece of lining over here and give you a demonstration. And I'm having trouble here because the sun is right at an angle that it's shining in the window. I'll try moving my camera over. It takes just a little bit to get this started, but once you have a few curves cut, it goes pretty smoothly. First of all, I need to get it in the right direction. I have this feather board here to help hold the lining against my fence that I have set up here. So. I do have a line here on my plywood that's a 1/4 inch away from my blade, so that's how I know where to cut the kerf at. But once you get going, it goes pretty quickly. There I've done probably 6 inches this piece, and this piece is about 30 inches long, so it shouldn't take me too long to cut that piece out. But that's basically what it looks like. And I cut out 4 pieces of lining. Each one's long enough to go around half of the guitar in one piece. So I'll finish cutting these out and I'll have my lining done. So here is my kerfed lining that I finished cutting out, and it gives you an idea what it. There we go. Give you an idea what it looks like. Oops. There's the profile. So very bendy, very flexible. Not the most exciting thing to do, but at least I've used up some of my extra mahogany that I had left from the neck. I had one little piece that broke off, but that's okay. So the lining is done. For woodworking plans, tips, and techniques, visit randallprice.com.